The far-right tradition in France finds its origins in the Third Republic with Boulangism and the Dreyfus Affair. The modern far-right, or radical right, grew out of two separate events of 1889, the splitting off in the Socialist International of those who chose the nation and the culmination of the Boulanger Affair, which championed the demands of the former Minister of War General Georges Boulanger. The Dreyfus Affair provided one of the political division lines of France. Nationalism, which had been before the Dreyfus Affair a left-wing and Republican ideology, turned after that to be a main trait of the right wing and, moreover, of the far right. A new right emerged, and nationalism was reappropriated by the far right, who turned it into a form of ethnic nationalism, itself blended with antisemitism, xenophobia, anti-Protestantism and anti-Masonry. The Action Française, first founded as a review, was the matrix of a new type of counter-revolutionary right wing, and continues to exist today. During the interwar period, the Action Française and its youth militia, the Camelots du Roi, were very active. Far-right leagues organized riots. The organization Armée Secrète was created in Madrid by French military opposed to the independence of Algeria. Jean-Marie Le Pen founded the Front National Party in 1972. At the 1986 legislative elections, the FN managed to obtain 35 seats, with 10% of the votes. Marc Frederickson, a French Algeria activist, created in April 1966 a neo-Nazi group, the FAIN. However, in 1978, neo-Nazi members of the GNR FAIN broke again with the FN. During the 1980s, the National Front managed to gather, under Jean-Marie Le Pen's leadership, most rival far-right tendencies of France, following a succession of splits and alliances with other minor parties. During the 1970s, the Dreyfus Affair was a turning point in the political history of France and in the Third Republic. Established after the 1870 Franco-Prussian War and the 1871 Paris Commune, the modern far-right, or radical right, grew out of two separate events of 1889. The Socialist International was formed at the Paris Conference, which imposed doctrinal orthodoxy on socialists and demanded their allegiance to the international working class rather than their nation. This forced patriotic socialists to choose either their nation or the international workers' movement. Many chose their nation and fell into violent conflict with their former socialist comrades. Those who chose the nation and retained the strategy of violence, then used most often against their former comrades, formed much of the base of the radical right. Many of those people also proved susceptible to the blandishments of antisemitism, which has long been a hallmark of the radical right. This would include Charles Bernard and Antoine Jourde, among others. The second event of 1889 was the culmination of the Boulanger Affair, which championed the vague demands of the former Minister of War General Georges Boulanger. Boulanger had attracted the support of many socialists by ordering lenient treatment of strikers when the army was called upon to suppress strikes. He also rattled his saber against Germany, which pleased French patriots intent on taking revenge against the German Empire. But his saber rattling scared the other ministers, who dumped Boulanger from the government. When his champions mounted an electoral campaign to have him elected to the Chamber of Deputies, the government reacted by forcing him out of the army. His backers then elected him to the chamber again from Paris, where he gained the support of both conservatives, who loathed the Republic, and socialists with their own ideas about how the Republic should be remade. This joining of the left and right against the center formed the foundation upon which the radical right was built in subsequent years. Violent agitation in Paris on the election night in 1889 convinced the government to prosecute Boulanger in order to remove him from the political scene. Instead of facing trumped-up charges, Boulanger fled to Belgium. His supporters, Boulangists, afterward nursed an intense grievance against the Republic and reunited during the Dreyfus Affair to oppose the Republic and back the army once again. In 1894, a Jewish officer, Alfred Dreyfus, was arrested on accusations of treason and sharing intelligence with the German Empire. The Dreyfus Affair provided one of the political fault lines of France. Nationalism, which had been before the Dreyfus Affair a left-wing and Republican ideology, turned after that to be a main trait of the right wing and, moreover, of the far right. Émile Zola entered the political scene with his open letter, J'accuse, quote, followed by other writers, artists and scholars supporting him with a manifesto of the intellectuals. helping to define the meaning of the term intellectual, while the left and right were at loggerheads, mainly over the questions of militarism, nationalis,